What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with another video. And today I got a pretty interesting topic. I want to talk about the 5 things that we learned during the 2021-2022 NFL season. But before we get into those 5 things, you guys know the drill around here. Mott's applesauce, if you're ever hungry, thirsty, whatever it might be, Mott's applesauce will satisfy whatever satisfy you need to satisfy the Caveman guarantee. I promise it will never fail you. One thing we already all knew was how damn good Mott's applesauce is, right? Am I right? Alrighty, so this video is relatively straightforward, so I don't think any explaining needs to be done, so let's not waste another second. The first thing that we learned during the 2021-2022 NFL season is that the term any given Sunday has never applied to a season more than it has to this one. Maybe it's me experiencing recency bias, or maybe I just don't remember the past correctly, but I feel like this year was just so volatile. I mean, there were humongous, colossal upsets every single week that nobody could have saw coming. We should have known that this year was going to be whack as hell after the way opening week went. We saw the Pittsburgh Steelers go into Buffalo and take down the Bills on their own home field, and then the New Orleans Saints blew out the Green Bay Packers by like 30 points. I mean, nobody saw either of those upsets coming, especially in the fashion it happened, at least in the New Orleans Saints game. Talk about a tone-setting week, but it only got worse from there, and that's the craziest part about it. Just to name a few, the Tennessee Titans lost to both the Jets and the Texans, yet they still won the top seed in the AFC. The Kansas City Chiefs started off abysmal. Nobody could have seen that coming. Both the Jaguars and the Texans dealt some serious damage this year. The Jaguars beat the Buffalo Bills mid-season, which ultimately was a game that the Bills could have used to get the first seed, and they also knocked the Indianapolis Colts out of postseason contention in the final week of football. And then for the Texans, like I mentioned, they beat the Tennessee Titans, and they also took out the Los Angeles Chargers in week 17 in a game that really would have helped the Chargers make the postseason, because as we all know, they missed out. So the Jags and the Titans, I mean, my God, they did some upsetting this year. Some wild shit happened this year, and it really makes you think. This was the first season that sports books, for sports betting, teamed up with the NFL, and the year was going the way it did. It kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit, I cannot lie. Anyways, let's move into the second thing that we learned this season, which is that the Kansas City Chiefs are no longer that dynasty that we all thought they could possibly be. I'm not even just talking about the way the postseason went for the Chiefs. I mean, they were easily the favorite to take home the conference this year, but a rocky start at the beginning was a humongous reason why they didn't get that bye. As the season progressed, they did screw their head on straight, which I think everybody should have expected to happen eventually because they are the Chiefs. I saw some people counting them out, which was absolutely ridiculous. And they went into the playoffs as the team that made it to the last 3 AFC championships with 2 victories and a Super Bowl win. So you would expect them to do just as much damage this year as they had in the past. We all thought that the AFC championship game was between the Chiefs and the Bills in the divisional round in that historic shootout. And then in the conference championship, it was looking like that. The Chiefs were decimating the Bengals, and then of course we all saw what happened. But that loss, the way that the Bengals took out the Chiefs, is extremely damaging to the long-term legacy of the Patrick Mahomes era Kansas City Chiefs. That loss really did show that they can no longer be that dynasty that we all thought they might be on their way to becoming. I mean, they had an opportunity to go to 3 straight Super Bowls, and it was blown in just a single half of football in the worst way possible. But another important note is that not only are they no longer that dynasty, but it shows that they are human, that they are not the Kings, the dominant force in the AFC that we once viewed them to be. This conference is as wide open as it's ever been. All right, so let's move into number 3. The third thing that we learned in the 2021-2022 NFL season is that running backs truly, ultimately don't matter. Now, let me explain a little bit more, because of course running backs matter and you need them to play the sport of football on the offensive side of the ball, but what I mean by that is it's nice to have a top-of-the-line guy, but at the end of the day, you really don't need one to be successful. With the way the NFL has been trending, teams have been getting away from that traditional style of bell cow backfield where one guy dominates the touches, right? Now it's becoming a running back by committee type of league where you have a guy for first, second down, and then you bring in a guy for third down, or maybe teams have multiple guys that you have on first and second down and they rotate drives. I mean, teams are just using multiple backs nowadays. And yes, I understand that I'm not telling you anything you didn't already know, but I feel like this fact was 100% stamped and sealed here in the 2021 season because of what happened with the Tennessee Titans. If there was one ultimate bell cow running back left, left, it was Derrick Henry. Granted, he wasn't really a third down back, but still, this guy was dominating touches at a level that you really didn't see in the NFL anymore. But when he went down, we all thought the Tennessee Titans were going to stutter on offense, but that really wasn't the case at all. I'm not intending to take anything away from King Henry because he is a difference maker and he is one of a kind, but still, the Tennessee Titans, in his absence, were able to go 6-3 and were able to still secure the top spot in the AFC. But the stat that really got me was the stat that said in the Titans' first 8 games, while Derrick Henry was healthy, they averaged 148 yards per game. In those final 9 games in the regular season without him, they averaged 136, so only 12 yards less. So their running game, the aspect that they lost their best player in, really didn't even lose a beat. I mean, this happened with the Cleveland Browns, the other dominant running game in the NFL. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both missed significant time, and Dearness Johnson stepped in and looked like Nick Chubb with the wrong nameplate on. I mean, he looked like a top legitimate running back in the league because of the system he was in. It's really starting to show how little these guys actually are making an impact. It's just all about the scheme and the ability to hit a hole. Something tells me if this can happen to the Tennessee Titans with Derrick Henry and the Cleveland Browns with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, it can ultimately happen with Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts. So I do think it's safe to say at this point in time, running backs truly don't matter anymore. The fourth thing that we learned here in the 2021-2022 NFL season is that I think the age of winning Super Bowls with average to below average quarterbacks has officially come to a close. And what I mean by that is I think it's getting harder and harder for teams to build around a quarterback that need to be protected at all times. I mean, you can give them the best run game in the NFL. You can give them one of the best defenses, but at the end of the day, I think quarterbacks are becoming so talented that if you have somebody below average, it's ultimately going to be a tremendous disadvantage to you, no matter how good your run game or defense is. There were 3 teams that fit this mold very well this season. For example, the Indianapolis Colts were the first one. They had a quarterback that really was struggling, right? But they had a running game that moved them up and down the field and a defense that was able to make stops on a consistent basis as well as get the ball on turnovers. But when push came to shove and Carson Wentz did really have to perform and make a play happen, he really struggled in those big moments. In that final game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he had to do so, and he ultimately ended up throwing for under 200 yards and had 2 turnovers. So I mean, you really can't be protecting these below average guys the way you used to be able to. Second team that really fits that mold is the New England Patriots, right? Granted, Mac Jones was a rookie, but I think it's pretty clear that he is not that uber talented guy that can make a difference single-handedly, right? They made the postseason and got matched up with the Buffalo Bills, who they beat earlier in the year on the Bills' own home field by only throwing 3 passes. And then they go and get blown out in the wild card round because Josh Allen took over and that high-flying offense was just far too talented for the Patriots to keep up with. And that's because Mac Jones is not good enough. And then the best example is, of course, the 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo. They are the best example of this easily, right? They were able to pull off a couple of upsets, right? They took down the Dallas Cowboys early on. Their defense really stepped up in that game, and their defense took another step up in the following week in the divisional round against the Green Bay Packers. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo really was not doing anything over these first 2 weeks, right? Especially in that divisional round game, Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 134 yards and a pick. He did nothing against the Packers. But Jimmy's lacking ability really caught up to them in the conference championship, right? Against the Los Angeles Rams, he had to step up. He had to make a play. But the 49ers, they just didn't trust him to, and they were severely restricted on offense, and they were not able to take advantage of opportunities that could have helped them in that game because of Jimmy Garoppolo's lacking talent. And then ultimately, at the end of the game, they had a potential game-winning drive at hand. They had to drive the field. All they needed to do was get 3 points to tie the game, and Jimmy Garoppolo throws for -3 yards and ultimately gets picked off because he cannot drop back to pass on a consistent basis. He's just not that guy. Quarterbacks are just getting far too talented to have a guy that cannot make a single-handed impact. I mean, with Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, the list goes on. You cannot have these Jimmy Garoppolos, these Carson Wentzes, these Mac Jones anymore. The future of the league is heading in a different direction. And the fifth and final thing that we learned here in the 2021-2022 NFL season is that, in theory, you can be successful with minimal protection in front of your franchise quarterback. And that was exactly what the Cincinnati Bengals did all season long. I have never seen a team defy the odds, defy the laws of physics, defy everything I thought I knew about football more than the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they literally let this kid get hit at an abnormal rate, and they still made it all the way to the big game. I still don't get it. He was the most hit, the most sacked quarterback in all of football, and they made it as far as they did. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I understand how they did it. They just made sure Joe Burrow was getting the ball out as fast as possible so their uber talented wide receivers can get yards after the catch. Having a suitable run game also helps that fact, but still, he was still getting whacked. Even having this scheme in place where Joe Burrow was getting the ball out in just over 2 seconds, he was still getting smacked. He was still missing throws because he didn't have enough time to make that throw. I mean, it really didn't make sense. And I do really think that this was just an anomaly, that this really cannot be replicated ever again. It was a miracle that they even made it that far, let alone Joe Burrow not getting hurt up to that point. Granted, having this minimal protection caught up to them in the Super Bowl, but it took the best pass rush in football with one of the most generational defensive players to ever play the game to finally end their miracle run. It just really was tremendous how Joe Burrow didn't get hurt, and they were able to run that offense up to that point. It really blew my mind. Bengals were one hell of a sight to see this season, but I just don't think what they did this year can be replicated unless they protect Joe Burrow, and I don't think any team can ever do what they did again. I mean, this was one hell of a phenomenon, an anomaly, I mean, if you will. It really still doesn't make sense to me. It's like 2 + 2 = 5 in my mind. It just doesn't get it. So yeah, those are the 5 things that I thought we learned here in the 2021-2022 NFL season. Let me know what you think should be added down in the comment section below. But as always, if you enjoyed, and I hope you did, please like, subscribe, do all the fun stuff. If you want to hit the bell to be notified when I upload, I'd appreciate that. You want to go over to Twitter, follow me over there, I'd appreciate that as well. I have a TikTok down in the description that I think you should check out, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.